Good evening, everyone. I'm Jake LeBlanc, and tonight I'm going to talk to you a little bit about drones and UAVs. I will first be giving a brief overview of what drones are, some of their sensors, and how they navigate, while my partners, Jamil and Jadal, will be talking about how to hack drones. So, we're going to go over what a UAV is, types of UAVs, parts and sensors, communication methods, hacking, and securing UAVs. So, what is a UAV? A UAV stands for Unmanned Aerial Vehicle, and is basically an aircraft that can fly itself or can use input from a pilot on the ground. A drone is any vehicle that can be remotely operated or self-controlled with onboard sensors. The only difference between a drone and a UAV is all UAVs fly, and drones can include vehicles on the ground. But the terms are pretty much completely interchangeable. So we're going to talk about some common types of UAVs. First up, we have the multi-rotor in the middle. This is very popular amongst civilians and kids because of how easy it is to fly and set up. Next, we have fixed-wing drones, which are popular amongst military and commercial enterprises because of their long range and endurance. Finally, we have hybrid drones, which are really in the experimental phase. They use the multiple rotors to take off and land vertically, expanding the amount of places they can land, and they use the fixed wing to have longer range. However, hybrid drones are more of a novelty right now. I haven't seen any of them used in mass production, mostly because of how difficult they are to maintain. Also, transitioning from multi-rotor to fixed wing flight is very complicated and can usually induce a stall and crash the aircraft, so it's very complicated right now. All UAVs require a motor to move. The vast majority of them use brushless electric motors to keep them in the air, but the military has used gas-powered props as well as jet engines as well. Some military drones can be extremely large, almost as large as fighter jets themselves. Now, we're going to talk about observation equipment. Drones are usually loaded with various forms of observation equipment or cameras. They can be both visual and infrared. I've seen the police force use a lot of infrared cameras on their drones to help catch burglars at night. Some drones used fixed point of view or POV cameras, and others use PTZ or pan-tilt zoom cameras. The POV camera is usually fixed on the fuselage of the aircraft to help the pilot fly the drone. The pan-tilt and zoom cameras are usually for videographers. They take much better camera angles and can move independently of the drone. However, it's very confusing for the pilot to navigate a PCT camera and fly the drone at the same time. That's why some drones have two operators, one to fly the drone, the other to navigate the videography of it. And also, due to vibrations in the motor, almost all drones use some sort of camera stabilization. Next, we're going to talk about sensors. Drones, most of them have a GPS sensor for positioning, just like your car does. It tells the altitude of the drone, the heading, and the speed. Now, drones also have some backup sensors. They have an altimeter, which uses air pressure to determine the altitude of the drone. This is more accurate than GPS. They also have an accelerometer, which is like a compass. It tells you the heading, the angle of the drone, and this is very important for keeping the drone level. It can also tell you, the accelerometer can tell you if the drone pitches forward or backwards for movement. Now, hypersonic sensors are usually mounted on the drone for collision avoidance. Hypersonic sensor is basically radar, but instead of radio waves, it uses sound. Now, we use hypersonic sensors over radar because it is cheaper and lighter weight. Some drones have hypersonic sensors mounted on the side to help them avoid trees, and others use the hypersonic sensor pointed downward to determine a very accurate altitude reading. Alright, communications. Most civilian drones use 802.11 frequencies for communication. These are the same Wi-Fi frequencies we use at home. Now, the 2.4 GHz frequency is used for control commands and telemetry. The 5.8 GHz frequency is used for transmitting video. The 5.8 GHz is a higher bandwidth frequency, so it can transmit higher quality video. However, it has less range and less penetration. So that's why 2.4 gigahertz is more reliable and is used for command and control and telemetry commands. Now, military drone frequencies are very classified. I can't tell you a whole lot about that. But I can tell you they use a combination of terrestrial communications and satellite communications to talk to these guys. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the telemetry signal. The telemetry signal is the signal that the pilot sends to the drone to navigate it. It's back and forth communication between the pilot and the drone. The pilot tells the drone where to go, and the telemetry signal comes back it can tell you the altitude, the position, the heading of the drone. So you can use telemetry to fly the drone out of sight, or the onboard computer can use the telemetry signal to fly itself to different waypoints without any user control whatsoever. All right, I'm going to turn over the presentation to my partners now, and they'll tell you about hacking drones.
Thank you, Jacob. Hi, everyone. My name is Jadel, and I will be talking about ways to hack a UAV. We're going to go through radio jamming, drone hijacking, GPS jamming, as well as GPS spoofing. One way to stop a drone is by jamming the radio telemetry signal. This will prevent the drone from receiving additional control commands. But you also have to keep in mind that many of those drones have an onboard navigation computer that will follow pre-programmed navigation commands even after it loses its telemetry signal. Ground-based jammers. Several companies they offer ground-based jammers. What these jammers do is that they work to overpower the radio signals and it prevents the drone from receiving new commands or telemetry signals. Once the drone is jammed, it will either return to its home base using the internal sensors, or it will immediately land. It all kind of depends on what the drone is programmed to do once it loses the signal. It is possible for the drone to continue even if the telemetry signal is jammed. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. Drone hijacking. Now, this is rather interesting. Instead of the jamming of the drone being outright, it is possible to also hijack a drone telemetry signal. I don't think a lot of people understand that. Let me kind of run through that one more time. So instead of it being outright jammed, it's also possible to be hijacked because of its telemetry signal. This is like a drone man in the middle attack. Man in the middle, pretty big in cybersecurity. Also, this would be this would allow hackers, I should say, to remotely control the drone or give it a new navigational command. So that can be very detrimental. Some more information to know is drones usually communicate with a ground station via its telemetry box. The telemetry box, it gives the drone its navigation command via the flight control software. And also, the telemetry box is separate from the controller. We have some pictures that kind of show that information. With the flight planning software, it shows the WEP. WEP though isn't really as secure, but that's what it uses. And then you have the links, the video link, the GPS receiver. All the pieces to the puzzle when it comes to a drone. And actually, that's also why it is easy for hackers to get. Well, not easy, but Um, that's what gives the vulnerability for drones and getting hackers to get into a drone. It is possible. And also, a drone hijacking can be done by intercepting its commands. That's of course because of the planning software from the flight. And then you can inject them with your own commands. And once this happens, of course, the hacker now has full control and they can pretty much do what they want. Here's a little diagram that shows the communication route being attacked as opposed to the original communication route. See how easy it can be intercepted with a separate command, and then now at that point, they would have pretty much full control of the drone. So this is some things to keep note of, and that will conclude drone hijacking. And I will go ahead and pass it along to Jamil, and he will go ahead and follow up with the GPS jamming. Thank you.
Jadal, thank you for providing us with that information about two different ways to hack a UAV. I will go ahead and introduce two other ways as well, one being GPS jamming. GPS jamming can be used to prevent the drone from receiving GPS signals. The problem with this is that drones, even if they are prevented from receiving GPS signals, they can use their internal sensors to continue the task at hand. Another way is GPS spoofing, which is a better solution than GPS jamming. And that's only because it allows it allows you to control the drone by forcing GPS commands. So technically, even if a GPS signal is lost, the drone will not revert to secondary sensors. So back in 2011, in December of 2011, the Iranian cybersecurity forces actually landed a US spy drone. They technically done this by exploiting the GPS spoofing, through GPS spoofing to make the drone think it was returning to its base in Afghanistan. Now, there are ways to secure a UAV. One way to do so is to compare the GPS signals to the internal onboard sensors. The internal sensors, typically accelerometer, gyroscope, altimeter, cannot be blocked or spoofed by radio signals. The other way to secure a drone is by comparing the internal instrumentation to the GPS data, and that, of course, can be determined if the drone has been hijacked during flight. So many civilians currently have purchased drones. Drones are for sale to the general public, and many civilian drones can use Wi-Fi networks. Typically the ones you see in someone's house. Many residential areas. Now, the security of a drone is really dependent upon the manufacturer. Many manufacturers may have lax rules. Some others may follow more strict rules or more quality control rules, and some have better standards than others. Uh, you will see that some of those drones do have Wi-Fi security, and that's only basically because of the manufacturer. Again, you know, some manufacturers, when they tie their name to something, they want to deliver the best quality as possible, so they will provide Wi-Fi security. So drone telemetry and control commands can usually be intercepted with Wireshark running on the laptop. So for instance, say you're in a park somewhere flying your drone, and in the parking lot next to the park, you have a guy who has noticed your drone and decides he wants to hijack it and fly it to his house. So he has his laptop running, he has his Wireshark, and he decides to spoof the network that your drone is running off of. And essentially, that this thing technically can happen. I think I've heard of one case of this quite recently here in the Orlando area. So it's definitely good to look at manufacturers that have great Wi-Fi security for the drones, because that would definitely alleviate any issues of anyone wanting to do mischief like that. And then to conclude, basically what my colleague Jacob and my colleague Jadel have mentioned. The real main points I believe from this slides were really drones and UAVs are similar yet different. Both drones and UAVs can be hacked, of course, but there are several ways to secure both a UAV and a drone. And really, drone security is quite good, but it's very dependent on the manufacturer. So if you are in the market for getting a drone, it's highly recommended that you do a lot of research on the manufacturer and see if their drones are of good quality and good standards. And that should be all. If there's any questions, please feel free to give us an email, reach out to us through email, and we'll definitely be able to answer any of your questions. Otherwise, have a good one.